good. Are you hearing me to the back? Right. This is not a good voice right now. Good evening, everyone. We'll commence in exactly 2 minutes. So if we can just stand by so that we commence in just about 2 minutes. All right, good evening, everyone. Let me recognize the presence of the observers in the room, ladies and gentlemen of the media, Guyanese joining this live, wherever you are. A pleasant good evening to all of you. My name is Yolanda Ward, Public Relations Officer, the Guyana Elections Commission. And it is indeed a privilege to have you here joining us, whether at this GCOM Election Media Center this evening or from the comfort of your home or wherever you are. Indeed, it has been quite a long day. I'm sure for you members of the media on the ground covering these elections has been quite a remarkable experience. So today across the country, the Guyana Elections Commission conducted general and regional elections. For us, the voting process has proceeded smoothly and peacefully across the country. Where issues have arisen, they have been addressed promptly and transparently in accordance with the law. We remain concerned about the ongoing spread of misinformation and wish to provide clarity on some of the most common areas of confusion without naming or highlighting specific individuals or sources. The first issue I wish to touch on is the issue as it relates to Commonwealth ID cards issued to Bangladeshi nationals. I want to particularly emphasize that GCOM confirms that under Guyana's laws, Commonwealth citizens residing legally in the country for over 1 year are eligible to vote. The ID cards issued reflect the legal residency status and are valid for electoral purposes. May I pause here to emphasize that under the National Registration Act, where the electoral process actually begins from the point of registration, the eligibility for registration is that you must be a Guyanese citizen by birth, descent, naturalization, or a citizen of a Commonwealth country living in Guyana for 1 year or more. Once you are eligible and you have been registered, as you're fully aware, your information or your record is entered into the National Register of Registrants database. And at the time of an election, you are extracted onto an official list of electors. May I emphasize again that that is what the law provides for. It therefore means that once your name has been extracted onto an official list of electors, you are eligible to vote. The second thing I wish to raise in relation to matters circulated on social media today is as it relates to multiple nationals at one address. GCOM does not control living arrangements. In some cases, employees or agencies house temporary or contracted workers at single location. What matters is that the registration process was followed in compliance with the law. And I've explained this at point 1 as it relates to Commonwealth citizens. Throughout the day, we have seen the issue of the voting compartment facing inwards or outwards. As a matter of policy, and GCOM instructions are that voting compartments must be positioned to preserve voter secrecy. If any deviations were identified, presiding officers were empowered to immediately rectify them. I want to particularly note that where these matters were brought to the attention of our operations team, they were immediately addressed to the satisfaction of the candidates and agents at those respective polling stations. There was a matter as it relates to no ID card on polling day. Again, let me reiterate the legal provisions in relation to this. Persons without their ID card can still vote once their name is on the official list of electors. It is important to note that in such case, there is a procedure that must be followed. In such a case, they must answer security questions and may be required to sign an oath. This is in keeping with the Representation of the People Act. Another issue that confronted us throughout the day was a matter of name not found on the list, but persons claim to have voted before. The only valid reference is the official list of electors for this election. If a name is not on the list at a given polling station, that person cannot vote at that polling station. We have throughout all our public engagements prior to the conduct of these elections urged voters to always verify their registration details well in advance and of course knowing the polling station. To further supplement the process, we had information clerks placed across the country, particularly at polling places with us. We've received reports as well as it relates to police officers being stationed inside of polling stations. From us at GCOM, police officers are stationed outside of polling places unless their assistance is specifically requested by the presiding officer. This is consistent with electoral law and established protocol. Again, where these concerns were brought to us, they were immediately addressed. The big issue also that confronted us today was the concern of names of deceased persons seen on the list. Specifically, I point out here fouls and more. Names can only be removed from an official with an official death certificate submitted to the General Register's office. Without it, names may remain until the next list revision cycle. This is a legal safeguard to prevent wrongful removal. We have discussed this matter as it relates to the removal of deceased persons from the list, the process that GCOM, the legal process that GCOM engages in relation to how that is done, where we receive death returns from the General Register's office, and these flagging are done in accordance with the legal provision or during the claims and objections period where persons are permitted to make those objections. Of course, as you know, and we have published the multiple safeguards in place at polling stations to guard against any possible impersonation. There were some concerns as it relates to slow voting process at some stations. The feedback we've received from polling stations across the country was that the process was progressing smoothly and in accordance with GCOM's procedures. I want to particularly note that while minor delays may have occurred during peak periods, but all systems remain effectively functioning. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now at the point where I presume, if not all, most of our polling stations are probably closed and at the count. I'm saying probably because there is a provision in place that while the poll closes or should close at 6 p.m., that if there are electors in the line, it is the responsibility of the presiding officer to count the number of persons in the line, ask the police officer at that particular station to stand behind the last person and ensure that all those persons are attended to with that provision. I'm sure currently in the respective areas, statements of poll, where possible, where counts have been concluded, are probably en route toward the respective, whether deputy supernumerary returning officers or to the returning officers. Those statements are delivered. You, as well as the members of the public, can access that gallery from very comfort of their